Hey, Lauren.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I am so excited about this conversation, and I know for a fact, without a shadow of a doubt, that my audience, the folks who listen to this podcast, are into astrology. I just know that they are. So I just thought that this would be like a perfect conversation to have. I think especially and I'm totally curious to hear about your thoughts, but it's not that astrology is becoming more mainstream, because I think it's always been quote unquote mainstream, but I do think that it's more front and center than it has been in, previous years. So I'm super excited about that conversation. But before we get into that, just introduce yourself. What do you do? All of the good things.
Yeah, well, my name is Lauren Donelson Jones, and I am a therapist and astrologer with a virtual private practice. I offer IFS therapy in Washington State and then coaching and astrology readings everywhere.
Yes, which is like, again, when I learned about you, learned that you were an astrologer, I was like, wait. She's an astrologer and a therapist. Like, what? That is such a unique combination. And I know that it's incredibly helpful for your work. Can you explain what you mean when you say that you're an IFS therapist?
Totally. Yeah. So I am a licensed psychotherapist in the state of Washington. And IFS stands for Internal Family Systems Therapy. And it's the modality that I use. And most people are, well, not most, but most people that are in this sphere may be familiar with the term parts work. And that's basically what IFS is. It's just looking at different parts of yourself, building relationships with them, and doing healing work for parts that may be holding, whether it's trauma or just past experiences that need to be reprocessed and let go.
Yep, right. So when people are like, there's a part of me that there's another part of me that, that's exactly what you're getting at. Cool. Awesome. So, okay, so let's dive in, right? Talk to us about astrology as a system, right? And a system that goes beyond your sun, moon, and rising signs, right? Like, it's like those things are important, but it's much bigger than that. So can you talk to us about like how it's a system and how that all works?
Yes. So astrology is a very complex system. And I think that's just important to say, like, off the bat, that like we're not dealing with simple stuff here. Like, there's a lot of moving parts. And sun, moon, rising is really just scratching the surface. But at the same time, I think it's amazing that even just knowing your sun, moon, rising is like a lot of powerful information, right? Like, even though it is scratching the surface, it's still a lot of like helpful info. But yeah, it's just the beginning. Like, there are 8 planets plus the sun and the moon, and the planets are still only one layer. There's the signs like Virgo, Sagittarius, Cancer. There are the aspects between the planets. There's the houses. And then there's a whole nother world of timing within astrology. And then that's only natal astrology. There's astrology for world events. There's astrology for asking questions. There's astrology for, selecting the right time to do something. So that's my first thought, is that it's just extremely complex.
Wait a minute. Hold on. Because my mind is a little bit blown here. Hold on.
Okay, I'll slow down.
So what do you mean that there's astrology? So what's the difference between astrology for, like, when to, get married, let's say, or like have kids or whatever? Like, when to do certain things versus astrology, for like healing past trauma?
Yeah. So we're looking at the same stuff, but we're using it in a totally different way. So I'm still looking at the planets and the signs and the aspects and the houses when I'm helping someone decide when to get married. But I'm looking at it through a totally different lens than when I'm helping someone like understand how they communicate or how they can communicate with their partner better. Like, I'm looking at the same thing, but through a different lens, if That makes sense.
Right. Can you give us an example of what that might look like or sound like?
Sure. So like, for example, like in my therapy practice, when I look at someone's chart, I'm always looking at their moon. I'm always looking at their Mercury, because those two planets sort of make up, in a very basic sense, the way that we communicate. And so, you know, if you're like have Mercury in Pisces and a Cancer moon, like that's going to tell me certain things about the way you feel and process emotions, and then the way you communicate that to other people.
Got
So
it.
compared to electional astrology, which is again deciding when to do something, I might be focused more on Venus if I'm looking at when someone's going to get married. Like, what's Venus doing in that chart? And of course, it's important natally too, but Venus serves a totally different function when we're looking at a lifetime of commitment starting at this one day versus like Venus over the lifespan.
That is so fascinating. It's like I had an idea, but like I don't know, like I'm thinking about this way differently. And I subscribe to the Channing Nicholas app, right? And I know that sometimes she's like, you know, if you want to do A, B, and C, like this is the perfect time to do it. And like I get that cognitively, right? But was not really understanding kind of like this extra layer of, well, if this planet is doing this one thing,
right?
This particular planet that is in charge of doing this one thing, then like, you know, this makes sense. Wow. Okay. My mind is blown in the best way. And so, in thinking about our purpose in this lifetime, right? Or, you know, even if we take it a step further, you know, how we came to be entrepreneurs in particular, how can astrology be supportive in that way?
Wow. I mean, there's so many ways that it can be supportive. I think if we're really narrowing in on business, being an entrepreneur, your life path, I think a really good place to get to know and explore in your chart is something called the midheaven. It's basically like the highest reaching point of your chart. And if you think about how you have like a moon sign and a Venus sign and etc., the midheaven is basically like your career sign. And so
God, I know y'all can't see me unless you watch this on YouTube. You're not seeing me, but I'm telling you, as she's speaking, I'm just looking at my midheaven because now I'm curious. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And what about when it comes to like your purpose in this lifetime?
Well, so those things could be the same thing or they may not be, depending on your chart. So again, the midheaven sign is just like the entry point, right? It's like your career overall throughout your lifspan. Like sometimes I like to think about it like if you were a celebrity, it would be what the public knows about you. Right? So it's like what you're offering to the world, and depending on your nature, depending on your chart, like how much of yourself you bring into that varies greatly, right?
Yeah. You want to know what my midheaven is?
Of course.
Well, actually, based on what you know, like what is your guess? Your top 2 guess? Let's just like make this a game real quick.
What sign do I think it is? I know that you are a fantastic communicator. So I'm thinking something mercurial, like Virgo or Gemini, something where you're like teaching, speaking, writing, podcasting.
Yes.
That would be my guess. And if I didn't get it, I have another guess.
No, you're absolutely right. My midheaven is in Virgo in the 10th house. What does that mean?
Says the podcaster.
What does that mean?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we're actually in Virgo season right now, and we're on the last day of Mercury retrograde as we're recording this. So your midheaven is ruled by Mercury. So when we know the midheaven sign, we can also know the planet that rules over or is responsible for that sign. And that's equally as important as the sign, if not more important to know. Like for you, Mercury is your career planet. Virgo is your career sign. Mercury is your career planet. And so Mercury is the planet of communication. So all things speaking, teaching, writing, podcasting, anything that gets an idea from your mind and your body out to someone else or a group of people. Virgo energy, it's an earth sign. So we're all about things that are tangible. So yes, ideas, but ideas that are grounded in reality, ideas that are practical and useful and like straight to the point. Virgo's also like known for being organized, known for being very driven, known for, just like being someone that, one of my favorite words for Virgo is actually an editor. So like someone that can look at a lot of data and like take away what is not necessary so that people can understand it better. Like if you think of like a book editor, they often don't get as much credit as the writer, but it's like, you need that editor. Like if I was going to write a book, I would hire someone with a Virgo moon or strong Virgo placements to edit for me, because that's the gift of Virgo is editing away what is not necessary to communicate something.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Tell me how that lands with you.
I mean, this makes a lot of sense. And also, as you probably already know, my work is pivoting. Anytime that I connect with like ancestors or guides or like highest self, the message is always like your words. And I'm just like, okay, yeah, but like, what do you mean? But it's exactly this that you're saying here, right? It is the podcasting. It is the book that is coming, right? It is the writing.
Ooh, the book that's coming. I can't wait.
Yes. You heard it here first. Don't ask me anything else because I don't know anything else. But it's exactly that, the teaching, right? I think that I used to be a teacher, and oftentimes, once I became a therapist, I always wondered, like, why, like, what was the purpose of that season? Like, I could have just like skipped all of that and became a therapist, right? Because I've always wanted to become a therapist, but all of this makes sense. Right? Yeah.
And as someone who also taught before she became a therapist, I think there's so much parallel in the communication aspect, as you know, as a former teacher, like the way you communicate ideas is everything.
Yeah.
And I think, there's so many parallels with therapy as well, but
yeah. So before we like pivot a little bit here, as you were speaking, I thought, shouldn't entrepreneurs just have an astrologer on payroll?
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Like, I don't know how anyone in business does it without the help of astrology. It has been such an immensely helpful tool. And I have lots of examples of how and why, but I completely agree with you.
Please give us 2 examples of how.
Totally. Okay. So, for example, this summer was the summer of Venus retrograde. If you were around the astrology Instagram or TikTok world, like, you could not miss it because it was a really big deal. So we had Venus retrograde in Leo all summer. And if you're someone like me who, Leo is an important part of your chart, or the Venus ruled signs, Libra or Taurus, are important for you, that meant that this summer was a huge period of reflection and of slowing down and of rethinking and pulling away from things and maybe turning towards different things. And I'm just imagining, like, as an entrepreneur, if you didn't know that, if you didn't know the context, if you didn't know what was going on in the weather, and then that started happening, like that could be really, I know I would be very shaken up by that if I didn't have the context that like, like I might be pivoting during this season. And it's not bad. It's meant to be happening and it needs to happen. Even though, of course, as you know, it can be scary when you're like, whoa, like I didn't see that coming. So I feel like that's like the biggest thing, really. It's just that when you know the weather, you can be prepared for the weather.
Yeah.
You're not going to get caught in the rain without your rain boots.
No, I mean, absolutely. This summer was when I made the pivot. So I can co-sign exactly what you're saying. And, you know, now that we are, you know, kind of like coming out of that phase and that season, you know, I can look back to certain things that I did that like didn't work out. And I'm just like, oh, this is why, or things that I went towards and it took off so quickly. Right. And it's exactly this. Right. So it's really interesting because like, how do I say this? It's like we get all this information about astrology. Like we know the things that are happening, but then there's this other level around like, well, how do I even use this? Like, what does this mean? And then like, how do I use this for myself? Right. Like, how do I use this? And I think that oftentimes like that's the part that's missing. And I don't know if you need kind of like a one-on-one, like, let me have this person on payroll, or if there's like a platform or something. You're laughing. So like, tell me your thoughts.
This has been the question that I've been trying to answer for years. Is like, how, like, can astrology be delivered effectively and usefully beyond one-on-one? And I hope that the answer is yes in the future. But honestly, right now, I'm just like, it's so complex. It's so personal. The only way I know how to really make an impact with it is one-on-one in this time of my life. I might change my mind later.
Yeah.
But I think that's part of the beauty of it too, is that it's just, it's very rich and it's very complex.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So let's switch gears a little bit, right? And if we kind of switch gears in one way, but kind of still speak to the intersection of like astrology and entrepreneurship, which by the way, I was listening to a podcast the other day. I can't remember which one. And someone was saying that she was at this retreat and the retreat was maybe, you know, it was like super high level. It was like millionaires there. Like it was kind of like that type of retreat. And they had an astrologer come and like read them, and it completely changed this woman's life. And I was like, wait. So that's kind of like where this question was coming from, because it was just something that I've always thought, but I like to have this idea that like the world's billionaires, right, that are like killing our earth, this is a different conversation, right, that the people that are really, really wealthy, they're using these types of like healing arts and these types of modalities to like really do the damn thing. You agree? Because you're nodding.
I think so.
Yeah.
We know for sure that I believe it was Ronald Reagan had an in-house astrologer.
Really?
Princess Diana had an astrologer. And I'm sure that there's more that we don't know. It has been confirmed that Reagan, I believe it was Reagan, had an astrologer helping with world events. Yeah.
I see. I would not expect Reagan, but okay.
I know.
All right.
I know.
All right. So, okay. So how can, you know, as we mentioned, right, like astrology is just so much more mainstream now. I love the memes that are like, you know, that make fun or like poke fun at the different, like the personality traits of like different signs. And so how can entrepreneurs in particular use astrology to reject hustle culture, right? And this, it's so common in entrepreneurship. And people tend to go towards the overdoing, overfunctioning, hustling, that sort of thing, right? To be successful instead of being impactful with ease, right? So like, how can folks really use astrology to, to like reject that and really do what they came to do, but with ease and not, without burnout?
So I have two parts to this answer. The first part is kind of like what we talked about before, getting to know your midheaven, the planet that rules it. Then there's a few other parts of your chart that could be helpful in studying, mainly the sixth house. So if anyone wants to like look up that on their own time, the sixth house is another place that can describe your work and your working style. But I think like once you have a sense of your midheaven, the planet that rules it, how that works in your chart, like then you don't need to hear all about the hustle and like what other people are doing. Like you as a Virgo midheaven, like we are working totally differently. You're working differently than I am as a Taurus midheaven. There are some similarities, like we both have Earth midheavens, like we both want things to be practical and sustainable and help us like build security. Like that's like the similarity, but there's also a lot of differences in the way that we're working and relating to our work. So I think bringing in the insights that the midheaven can provide can help you just stay focused. Like recently I was working with someone that had a Gemini midheaven. And Gemini is all about like multiplicity and doing a bunch of different things and having variety and communicating. Like Gemini is the realm of ideas and thinking. And if they're working with someone who's telling them, focus in on one thing, only do one thing, that's not going to work for them.
Wow.
Because that goes totally against the nature of what they're here to do, which is do all kinds of stuff.
Wow.
So that's my first answer.
Okay, you could say the second one. I'll come back to my wow.
My second answer is within timing. There's different kinds of timing. Like when we talk about Mercury retrograde, that's the transits. We're all experiencing that at the same time, even though it's impacting me and you differently. But there's also this whole other branch of timing that is personal timing. So like what's happening to me personally is totally different than you. And when we can understand that, I think that's when, to me, that's when this stuff really comes alive, where like you might be modeling yourself after someone that is in the peak period of a 30-year cycle where they're like out and they're visible and they're creating all this stuff. But maybe like in your 30-year cycle, yours is waning, or you're in like the very beginning, like seed planting phase. And so I think, again, like knowing your personal astrology can kind of help you just sort of stay focused on like what you need to do. And it's not about like not having help and support. Like, of course, I'm very pro help and support, but still knowing like, okay, the next 5 years are a growth period, or they're a releasing period, or whatever, or wherever you are in the cycle. I think it's just so important to know.
Oh my gosh, I have so many thoughts and questions here, right? Because one of the things that you said that like just like really stood out to me is, the whole Gemini thing, right? And, everyone's like, you have to niche down, but like how frustrating would it be if you have a Gemini midheaven? It's literally, you're swimming upstream. And so it sounds like astrology is a way for you to float down the river, right? So that you are not, having to like really exert all this energy. It's like, no, but this is just kind of how I'm built, right? This is my composition. So let me go towards the people, the places, the partnerships, the business, whatever that makes sense for my composition, right? And it doesn't change, like, right? It's just, this is who you are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the information like that we get from the chart is like the potential And then the timing is the piece that can tell us when. When is that going to happen? When is that business going to launch? When is the money going to come in? That kind of thing.
This is like, do people know about this? Like what?
I'm out here talking about it, Josie.
You are. You definitely are. You definitely are. This is just like so, like I knew like a little bit, you know, but like now just like, I need you on payroll. That's what I'm saying. Like I need someone on payroll because like, sure, I think that, you know, and I've been honest about this in public about this, that like, I don't move in my business, really my personal life without connected with my spiritual team. Right. But then, and that's real. And then there's also this like other kind of system that can also be complementary, right? Like and supplementary, whatever, right? Like that can be really supportive. And like, why not resource yourself? Just something I feel like I've been saying now for months, but like, why not resource yourself to like really not just like do what you came to do, but like do it in a way that you don't have to like kill yourself in the process, right? Which is so helpful.
Agreed.
So your background, right, which I think is just so fascinating, and I'd be super curious to hear of the folks who listen to this episode and, you know, follow your work, kind of like what their thoughts are. But it's just so fascinating, you know, that you are a therapist and an astrologer. And so if a therapist wanted to work with you to like help them heal their hustle, let's say, how would you use both astrology and IFS or whatever other therapy modality, your tool belt, to support them? Like, how do they come together in the room?
Yeah. Well, astrology, in my experience, provides helpful, impactful context. It provides clarity. It provides confirmation around like the what in a very broad sense. Like what's going on here? Like what does the map of your life look like? And I use IFS as sort of like, okay, now what? Like if I'm sitting here telling you like, you're a healer, like you could be an entrepreneur, like, but that's not what you're doing and not what you've been doing. Like there could be a gap between where you are and the potential of your birth chart. And I use internal family systems as a way to work with whatever personal blocks or, again, trauma or just family of origin history, whatever. I mean, the world we live in is traumatic, as we all know. To help someone navigate and move towards their potential in that way. And for me, like this is the tool that works. Once we know where we're going, like IFS is the tool that helps us get there and release wounds, release creative blocks, and anything that might be in the way of that potential.
Wow. So, right. So it's kind of like, you know, it's like you have the astrology and that gives you like important information, but it's just like, how are you linking the two from like where you are to like where you could be or like what's available to you? Yeah.
Because I think as much as I love and adore astrology, like it is an intellectual practice. It's data. Like my job as an astrologer is like, I'm interpreting the data for you. I'm interpreting the symbolic language for you in a way that you can understand. But as you know, from being a therapist, insight does not equal change, does not equal movement. Sometimes it does. But in my experience as a therapist, for most people, like they can know intellectually, but IFS is a way to get all of your other parts on board. It's a way to get in connection with parts that are afraid, parts that don't want you to be visible, all the things that come up with business owners, parts that are afraid of charging X amount or whatever.
Yeah. So you know what? Since you mentioned that, let's get into that real quick. Right.
Yeah.
And this can translate to someone who works within an organization or a leader, right, who is not going for a promotion or is not renegotiating their salary, whatever the case is, right? So, if someone comes to you and, they say, I want to work with you, I have all of these money blocks. I'm not charging, say, as an entrepreneur, I'm not charging accordingly. I know that I should, I can't. So like from the astrology side, like what are you looking at? What planets, what placement, like what are you looking at? And then from the IFS, like more insight oriented place, like what are you also looking at?
Yeah, so there's a variety of things that could, manifest that way in your chart. Could be, moon placement, moon aspects. There could be certain timing things that are impacting you. But and the chart can tell us a lot about our childhood in general, about like our childhood experiences, like was our childhood nurturing and supportive, or were we fending for ourselves? It can tell us a lot about that.
The chart can.
The chart can, yes.
Okay.
And again, I always find that background context from the chart extremely helpful. But beyond that, it's like, we got to look at that part that's saying, I know I should be charging more, but the one that's saying, but I can't, or I'm worried about what's going to happen if I do that. Like that's the part that I would be very curious about connecting with, if, with an entrepreneur or someone in the business world. And it's like, I've had clients where like the part that was scared was a really young part, or a part that experienced loss in connection with money. Our everyone's money experiences are so varied, and they're often not like up in our conscious mind, like they're stored in our bodies, and we have to go into our bodies to hear those stories and hopefully release the energy that blocks us around them.
Yeah. And this makes me even think, and I don't know if this is part of your work as well, or if there's like a way to get into this, but I also think about like past lives, right? And, how sometimes, right, like if you had some sort of money trauma in your past life, like that also comes in this, especially as entrepreneurs, right? Or just anyone living in this world, right?
Yeah.
And so is that something that kind of also comes up in your work, or is there a way that you can kind of like tap into that?
Yes, absolutely. It does come up relatively frequently. And from my experience, it's a part that is holding the past life experience. Mm-hmm. And that can be witnessed and reprocessed, just like a part that, is holding something from this lifetime. And so I kind of love it in that way, that I don't work with it that differently, but it does come through frequently.
Yeah. No, listen, we could talk about this forever because it's so much. I think part of like what I love about this is that like there's just so much at our disposal now, right? Like, yeah, we could tap in to a past life. We could tap into astrology. Like we could tap into all of these quote unquote systems, right? Human design. Like there's just so many different things that we can tap into to not just like learn ourselves a little bit more, and to your point, like stay focused and like shut out all the bullshit that we have to deal with in this world. But also like do the thing that we came here to do, right? And I have to like, be throwing spaghetti at the wall, kind of like seeing what sticks. Like it doesn't have to be like that anymore. And it's such a privilege, right? And like such a resource. And, if you're an entrepreneur, right? Like if you work for yourself, like you have so much more say in some ways, when it comes to how to do the work that you're here to do. So this is all incredibly fascinating to me, and I could talk about it forever. You have an Astro Club, don't you? Or like some sort of container?
I do. Yeah. So Astro Club is my free offering. It's totally free, and I created it because as much as I love giving readings, I love supporting people through like their healing. I just felt this void in my life where I just want to hang out and talk about astrology.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like very casual, and there's no like real agenda. Last time we met, I had a chance to answer a question from everyone, and we looked at their charts and we kind of went through it. So kind of similar in the way that I, broke down your midheaven for 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And I just, astrology is my love. Like, it's been my companion since like middle school. So I love it. I love talking about it. I love sharing it. And I just been craving like a more casual environment to do that. So I created the club.
So how can folks find out about like joining the club?
It is on my Instagram right now, and you can get on my mailing list too. And I send the info out there too.
Cool. So we'll link all of, we have your information as well, but like your website. So folks can definitely find you there. Well, I was about to wrap up, but now I'm curious, right? You've been doing this since middle school. So walk us through, how did you even get into astrology? Middle school? Like,
yeah. So I have memories from middle school of going into the Barnes and Noble and in Texas where I grew up, and all the like occult books were like behind glass.
No way.
And I would just like sit there sometimes and like just read them, like read the astrology books. Like I've always been drawn to it, like from a very young age. And it's sort of just been this thing for me that until graduate school was just like always with me, kind of always in the background. I've always been fascinated by it. And when I was in graduate school, I got my first reading, and it was life-changing.
Wow.
It was so affirming in a way that therapy and other types of readings, like I love tarot and psychic reading. I love all those types of readings as well, but it was so affirming and I felt so seen. And I also realized, and this isn't any like slight to the astrologer that gave me the reading, but I was like, oh, like, wait, I actually know a lot already. Like, I was like, wow, like I could do that. I could do what this person did. And so at the same time, I was sort of feeling like disillusioned by graduate school, as many of us do. Mm-hmm. And so I started to get serious about it. And I just started taking classes and studying, and here I am. That's kind of how it went. Yeah.
I really, our childhood, it's so funny because people can be so anti like going to their childhood, but like our childhood leaves clues. Like
absolutely.
Always.
I'm 100% with you.
It's just like, if we just went there for a little bit and we just remembered certain things, then it would all make sense. Like I have an older brother, but we have a lot of, like there's a big gap between us. So like I was pretty much like an only child. That's kind of how it felt growing up. And so I spent a lot of time, by myself. And so I used to pretend that I was the teacher and the students. So there would be like, I had like a little table in my bedroom where I used to do my homework, and I would sit on one side of the table and like pretend to be the teacher instructing the student. I would be on the other, then I would like get up and walk on the other side and like pretend to be like, it was a whole thing.
I can.
Yes, girl. For sure. So who ended up being a teacher? Hello, this girl right here.
Yeah.
Right. Who ended up being like a student forever and ever? This girl right here. Like it leaves clues. So
yeah, we know what we're supposed to do before the world gets to us and tells us what we should or shouldn't do.
Listen. I have close friends who have children, and I see this all the time with their kids. It's like they know, and how beautiful that because, their mothers, right, are part of like our generation. They're really guides. They're just like, tell me where you want to go. And I'm just, I'm going to keep you safe because you've never been here. So I'm going to let you know, but I'm really just going to guide you because, and it's like such a beautiful thing. Just exactly what you're saying.
Totally. I have 3 nephews under 7 and I love seeing them live their charts so purely because it's just like, again, like, yeah, the world's gotten to them already, but not in the same way that it does as we continue to grow up. And they're so unique. And their charts just come right out because they're not,
Right. Oh, love this. Okay.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up, we already spoke about Astro Club, but talk to us about your paid offerings. I know there's therapy, you start doing readings. Just let us know how you can support.
Yeah. Folks. So, I mean, you pretty much got it. I have a therapy practice that's available to people in Washington State. And then I do readings for people all over the world. And I do coaching too. And I integrate astrology into all my coaching. So that's part of that offering.
Yeah. So what type of coaching do you do?
I do a lot of coaching for therapists mostly who are looking to like either expand their businesses or just like need support as they venture into entrepreneurship, a lot of them for the first time.
Yeah. So it sounds like it's both business, but also like personal. I mean, we already know they're not separate. But sometimes people need a lane. And so that's that. Cool. Yeah. Well, thank you so very much. I hope if you're an entrepreneur, I mean, even if you're not an entrepreneur, you need to go get a reading from Lauren. If you're an entrepreneur, get the girl on payroll because honestly, I don't know anything about y'all, but this summer was one for the fucking books. And, I knew some things, but I kind of wish I knew some more things because I think it could have saved me some time or like, who knows, whatever. Maybe that was part of the lesson. But thank you so much for sharing your energy and your resources and your wisdom with us. Any last minute thoughts or questions or wisdom?
No,
anything?
I'm just so grateful that you had me. And yeah, it's been my pleasure.
Awesome. Thank you.